Last week we left off getting the magnets in the roadway and also tiling in the train tracks, but now on the other side of the roadway we had to tile in the train tracks too, and to speed the video along I went ahead and did that without recording any of it. I do still have to get the curved portions of the track, but I kind of held off on doing that because you have to tile underneath those, and it's a bit of a different process, and we will show that in another video. But now I want to focus on getting the buildings and more of the streets actually set in. To prep for that, what I did is I set down some of my plates and I went ahead and set the magnets on in the orientation I was going to want them installed. And then I took everything over to my build table and got busy trying to assemble some of these new road plates. With everything that I'm doing, I'm using the new road plate system, and I'm doing that because you have a cavity on the underside of all these road plate pieces, which allows me to put plugs, expansion boards, and everything else inside of them so I can neatly build each plate. This helps to keep my entire city modular, and it also keeps the wiring mess down to a minimum because you don't have to worry about plugging into each plate. Everything is connected using the magnetic connectors that I sell on my website. They are currently out of stock, but I will have them back in stock by next Saturday. With this section of roadway completed, I took it over to the build table to give it a try, and that's when I realized something. I totally screwed up. When I tiled in everything for the railroad crossings, what I was doing is I was tiling it in the way that I used to do all my old roads. My old roads, I used brick-built roads, and the sidewalks were only 5 studs in width. But now with me using the road plates, I now use a 6-stud width on the sidewalks, and I also forgot to notch for where the intersection comes in. So I had to take the plate back over to my build table and make a few quick corrections. One of those quick corrections being I also wanted to put a stop bar for both the traffic light and for the railroad crossing signal. With all my corrections complete, I just had to do a little bit more tile work and put these center lines down the middle of the road. We can take this back over to the table and try it again for a fitment. For the sake of speeding up the video, I did hurry up and make a correction to the road as well. I did not do this far end, and I will do that at a later date or in a future city update. But at least now, the majority of this section of road is 100% complete. For the power coming up and into the table, what I decided to do is use this little section here. So this first plate that I'm putting on, I do have a standard 1.25 millimeter plug that I'm going to be hooking the power to. Everything from this plate moving forward, though, will be connected using my magnetic connectors. And right here, I am just test fitting to make sure all of the connectors are going to line up with their corresponding connector on the plate next to them. To get this plate started, I have to make 4 intersection lights to put on each corner of the intersection. And I want to point out, if you can't see in the video anyway, I have color-coded all my lights. All the bit lights that I sell come with a white plug, and what I simply did is the green lights I made green, the yellow lights I did yellow, and the red lights I did red. And I used a magic marker to make sure each one of those were color-coded, because during assembly, having this many wires in one spot, it'll get confusing extremely quick, and by having them color-coded, it's very easy to decipher and to do the assembly. To make my traffic signals, we're using these 3 simple parts, and we are assembling them in this fashion. And the reason I'm doing that is because it makes it easy to run my wires through. Keep in mind, you do still have to fidget with it, but that does give you a passage without having to drill a bunch of holes in the pieces. Now I'm putting that blue Technics connection pin on the back of it simply to hold the tiles onto the completed assembly. And here's a nice up-close view so you can see the full assembly clearly, and it's important to note that the snot brick is facing to the right side with the opening, and that's important to note because that is where we're going to be attaching another blue Technic pin, quite simply for this reason only. I want the traffic signals to be able to swing so that way they can hang naturally and dangle like a natural traffic light. And the rest of the assembly is simply a bunch of these black friction pins and these round Technic connectors. I am using a total of 9 of these for the upright post, and then I have 4 for the piece that comes out and over the road. Fishing the wire through all these Technic pins and Technic connectors is probably the worst part about building this particular section of road, because it is the most tedious part about this build. In total, all 4 traffic lights fully assembled took me roughly an hour to an hour and a half. And a lot of that, again, is simply because of having to fish the wire through everything. For those that are interested, I will have the instructions for these traffic light posts for sale on my website for 99 cents here very soon. And also these railroad crossing signals, as I've had a couple requests for both. The link for my website will be below in the description of this video and the comments as well. Now let's get to trying to finish up the final assembly. Again, back to trying to place the magnets, make sure everything's aligned correctly, and doing a ton of wiring. To wire all the lights together, I am simply using one of the traffic signal controller modules that I sell on my website. I'm using 3 6-inch connecting cables to go from each output into 3 different 6-port expansion boards. I hate to admit this controller isn't perfect and it doesn't work exactly like an actual traffic signal should, but it at least gives you the motion and the changing of the lights, so it adds to the scenery touch. I am still working on another solution, hopefully to come out within the next few months, maybe, possibly. I'm not going to hold my breath. I do have another option for changing the lights and making them function 100% correctly, but the problem is it can't be built into the plate like I'm doing with this one. To show you the other option, this is it right here. It is a rather large board, but it does operate on 5 volts, and it can be controlled for both American and European style lights. But again, it is rather thick, as you can see right here, and it cannot be built into a base plate, and that's why I've been kind of hesitant to use it. To utilize this board, you would have to build it into a building next to the intersection, or you would have to build, say, a small control board or control panel next to the intersection and build it into that. And it would have to be a rather large control center. To give you some size reference, it's basically 2 bricks thick and it's a 6x8 plate in width in size. Anyway, with the intersection basically done, it's time to go back over to the actual display table and let's play some Godzilla. I did install a magnetic connector into my 3-story cafe corner building so I can get it back in place on the table and I can start putting all the roads around it. And we can start actually turning everything on so we can get a good look at what this is all going to look like fully illuminated. For those that are interested, the tables that I use, I make myself as I am also a carpenter. And to note here, I told you guys before, this is where I was going to have the power come in and I was just drilling the hole. Now we're physically going to plug in this first plate again with a 1.25 millimeter plug and boom, the lights came on. Very good. Now the tough part. Now we got to try and align this intersection with 3 sections of road, which makes it somewhat difficult to do. And it took a little playing around, and something I do want to note is I did use friction pins to make sure that actually stayed fully connected. Initially, I tried using the little blue pins, and what I was finding was happening because I am pushing everything together in 3 different directions. It kept popping apart and wasn't staying connected and illuminated. So using the black friction pins eliminated that problem, and I would recommend anybody that's using these to use that as well. Overall, I am extremely happy with the amount of progress I was able to get in this week, and I hope you guys like what you are seeing as well. We will have another city update hopefully next week, so we'll see you next time. I'm Bevins Bricks.